Hi, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of the Undiluted Word podcast. I'm your host, Dara. And today I have a very special guest. Her name is Panashe.
Hi, everybody. Hi. I'm Dara's friend, as she said. We know each other from uni. We lived together for 3 years and we spent a lot of time together at church, and the friendship has just continued. So thank you for having me.
So lovely to have you on here. And I'm glad that we can finally have our little chit chat that we usually have in the corridor, actually now with other people probably listening to us.
Yes.
We love quotes, and one quote to just sum up what this episode is going to be about, I've got is, when awareness is brought to an emotion, power is brought to your life. And that's by Tara Mayer Robson. So today we're going to be talking about emotional intelligence, and that's a term that some of you may or may not be familiar with. But what I advise you to do is get your notepads, your note apps, or whatever it is, to write down some notes whilst we have a discussion about this, what we think is a very important topic. So we'll get straight into it, and we'll start off with a definition of what is emotional intelligence. This is the ability to perceive emotion, integrate emotion to facilitate thought, understand emotions, and regulate your emotions to promote personal growth. That sounds like quite a lot, but essentially it's the ability to understand, identify, and assess your emotions and that of other people. There are four main components of emotional intelligence, and those are self-awareness, self-regulation, empathy, and social skills. So we're going to be discussing these components and hopefully give you all a better understanding of what they are and why they're important. So an important question to begin with: why have we decided to talk about emotional intelligence, and what's the fuss about it? Panashe, can you tell us a bit more?
Emotional intelligence affects every part of your life, whether or not you know it. It's going to affect your performance at school or uni. It's going to affect how you perform at work. And there's evidence that demonstrates that people who have a high level of emotional intelligence are able to navigate the complexities of work. They're better leaders, they're more motivated, they excel better in their career. And actually nowadays, when it comes to recruiting people for jobs, a lot of companies are actually rating emotional intelligence as an important part of your skill set when hiring. And then it also slips over into your health. If you're capable of controlling your emotions on a regular basis, you're more likely to be able to thrive in difficult situations. You're less likely to be susceptible to mental illnesses or mental health crises. It affects your relationships. People who are emotionally intelligent are often better communicators, so that works in romance as well as in friendship. It makes you better at forming strong bonds and relationships because you're less likely to be throw the whole friendship away. And by understanding your emotions and knowing the motivation behind how they're controlled, you're better able to just express how you understand and how you feel. And a lot of us know that communication is a vital part of relationships. And then social intelligence allows you to enter new circles and old circles, and it's just that ability to read the room. And we have all met people who cannot read the room, and you're just standing you're just standing there sir, are you okay? So it just pervades every part of your life, whether or not you know it. But if you know about it, then it's easier for you to manage it and use it to your advantage.
Yeah. I think it's really cool and interesting that obviously now a lot of people talk about intelligence and how that's really important. But now, through what you've said, it's clear that emotion and just being emotionally intelligent is also as important, even more important. Looking at a biblical perspective, in Proverbs 29, verse 11, it says, "A fool vents all his feelings, but a wise person holds them back." And when I first saw this, I was like, okay, we're talking about fool and being wise. And the foolish person is someone that is said to just vent all his feelings, maybe not really in a controlled manner. But a wise person holds them back and is able to assess how they want to maybe move forward and actually deal with how they feel in a constructive way. So I think that also shows you why it's important biblically to understand how we feel. And emotions is something that obviously God has in the Bible. He expresses different forms of emotion. So we as well have the ability to feel and to have emotions, but there's also that importance of being self-controlled whilst expressing yourself.
Yeah, definitely.
So we've talked about how there's basically IQ and there's EQ, as we can say, like emotional quotient. On a scale of 1 to like 100, if you were gonna like give yourself a score, Panashe, where would you place yourself in terms of your EQ?
On a good day, an exceptionally good day, I would say an 8 out of 10, back myself. On a bad day, which there are many, I would say maybe a 5 out of 10. It drops dramatically. For me, like, I would say I can be quite self-aware, but there's like a gap between knowing I'm in a bad mood and then actually doing something about it. So yeah, there's definitely some work that still needs to happen there, but by the grace of God. What about you?
Yeah, I feel like there are days where I'd give myself a good 7.56, something. I don't know, some weird number like that. But I feel, I'm in control of how I feel. I know that this is how I'm feeling. So I ought to be a bit more careful with how I interact with people. Because if not, I'm the type of person where how I'm feeling can really it can either really show on my face a lot, and like the energy around is just so different. And because I'm so energetic and bubbly at times, like when there is that shift in my mood, it can really drain other people. And I really don't like that sort of energy where someone walks in and it's just like, oh, please, like, why are you like that? So I'd hate to be that type of person. So I think that makes me want to actually work on my emotions and how I'm feeling. Yeah, but it's like a progressive thing, and we're never really going to get there in terms of just being 100% in it.
Definitely.
Yeah. Okay. So we've spoken about why it's important, and we've already mentioned earlier that there are those main parts of emotional intelligence. So we're going to just go into those different components now, delve into it a bit more. So the first one we are going to talk about is self-awareness. What is self-awareness?
Self-awareness is recognizing your own emotions and how they affect your thoughts and your behaviors. So maybe your strengths and your weaknesses and your self-confidence. And so I think that's just the basic first step of maybe waking up one morning and you're driving to work and then somebody cuts in front of you, and you get into a bad mood. And somebody who's self-aware, maybe 10 minutes later, maybe on the spot, will be like, I am now in a bad mood because of this person cutting me off. It's one of those things that I feel like, for me, I'm quite naturally aware and introspective. But that ranges from person to person. And it's important to remember that, because you will definitely encounter individuals in life when you look at them and you're like, are you aware that your behavior and your mood, it's just not correlating
at all.
But yeah, self-awareness is really important because it helps you navigate spaces with the right attitude. Because say if we follow on from the example of someone who has been angry because they got cut off in the morning, if you're aware of that, you're able to move into your next space, like when you walk into the office, with the knowledge that I have experienced this negative emotion, and you're able to make a decision about what you're going to do about it later. So it's a very vital first step to emotional intelligence.
Yeah. And I think following on from what you said, then it enables you to then know how to maybe interact with other people. I think in terms of being self-aware, a problem that we'll probably have is in terms of noticing or being aware of exactly what emotion it is. Because I think there's sometimes where something's wrong, but you're not exactly sure what it is. And I think that can even be more frustrating sometimes, because it's like, I know I'm feeling something, but like, what is it? And I think for me, what I then use is this emotional wheel that I found online, can't remember how, but this emotional wheel that sort of helps you break down exactly how you're feeling, or like what is the root of your emotion.
I feel like with the emotional wheel as well, like it's really helpful, and self-awareness, it's really helpful to be aware, because that is an essential part in communicating to other people what you need from them. Like, especially in friendships and relationships, if you are not thoroughly aware of what you're feeling, then when you want to go confront somebody, or you want to have a discussion about how somebody's mistreated you or things that you want to change, if you don't have the language to articulate that, it's a dead end, because they'll just be like, what do you want from me? And you're like, I don't know, but I know, but I don't know.
Yeah, that actually makes sense. With what you've just said, for example, I think the first initial feeling would be like, oh, you feel angry. And then like on the wheel, as I'm saying, it says angry, and then it says another bunch of reasons as to why that anger might be. And it says you feel let down, humiliated, bitter, mad, aggressive, frustrated, distant, or critical. So for example, if I'm angry at someone because they didn't do what I wanted them to do, that would be, I feel maybe let down. And then under that part, it says betrayed or resentful. And then from there, I could be like, okay, yeah, now I know exactly why I'm feeling angry, is because I feel actually betrayed by that person's actions. And then if I want to confront them or talk to them about it, it's like, oh yeah, I'm angry because you did this, that let me down, so I feel betrayed. And I think it really does help then in expressing how you feel fully.
Great. No, I think that's so true. Like, I think there's something to be said about being direct in your speech when it comes to people, because a lot of us are very general, because we just don't have the words to say what we mean. But when you're direct, like, it continues that line of directness down the chain. But if we're starting off vague, then it's just all of our reactions, all of the results that follow are just going to continue to be vague. So yeah, that's self-awareness. It's important.
Very. Okay, cool. We can move on to the next one, which is self-regulation.
So self-regulation is your ability to control impulsive feelings and behaviors, to manage your emotions in healthy ways, take initiative, follow through on commitments, and adapt to changing circumstances. So I feel like self-awareness is like step number 1, and self-regulation is step number 2, because there's like a jump in like experience and qualification between self-awareness and self-regulation. So like I was saying earlier, like, I'm quite introspective. Dara is also like a very introspective person. Like, I'm capable of sitting down and like really going to the root of my feelings and being like, today I am sad because they ran out of pizza and it has upset me thoroughly. But then that jump to self-regulation, that's a whole different ball game, because it's important to remember that you can be so self-aware, like you can have a PhD in self-awareness, but if you are not regulating them, it's pointless, because there's no action, there's just thought. It's like someone who's all talk and no action. It's all very well saying that I'm sad or I'm angry, I'm resentful, I'm frustrated, but if you're just going around bringing down the mood of the room, walking in and saying, I have been self-aware and I have determined that I am angry, you're just gonna be a menace to society. So self-regulation is definitely the next step.
So it's like, you are feeling this way, but then how's that gonna affect how you move forward? Are you gonna let that emotion then control you, or like are you gonna then control the emotion now that you have power over it? And I don't know exactly, there's some quote somewhere talking about what you don't know or what you don't name, you can't control, or you have no control over it. So it's like, until you're aware of what it is that you're feeling, you basically have no control over it, because you're not able to pinpoint and say, okay, this is what it is. Because then when you know what it is, you're able to sort of then know how you're going to regulate it. So yeah.
I feel like there's also something to be said that if you're the kind of person who, like, some of us are just moodier than others, and I'll put my hand up and say I'm one of those people. And I think there's something to be said about not being the kind of person who is adamant that everybody needs to know what I'm going through. Everybody needs to know that I'm upset, or that I've hurt myself, or that somebody nearly crashed into me this morning. And I think self-awareness and self-regulation are kind of like just that they're not, you can't separate them from each other, because I don't think they're effective without each other. Like it's a partnership that needs to happen. So if you're self-aware, you're like, I'm upset, but if you're self-regulating appropriately, you're not going to walk into a meeting at work and be like, oh, well, I'm sorry, somebody nearly crashed into me, and that's why I'm 45, like that's why I'm not performing to an adequate standard. Like self-regulation will help you show up to the spaces that you need to show up to with the right attitude. It's important. They're all important.
In Proverbs 13 verse 16, it says, all who are prudent act with knowledge, but fools expose their folly. Linking this with, in terms of like self-regulation, I think it's basically trying to also explain how a fool is someone who, they have this emotion and then they act anyhow because of it, and they allow the emotion to control them. In terms of, for example, if someone was angry, they'll show no like sort of self-control or restraint because of their anger. They're angry because maybe something happened to them on the way to work, but now they get to work, and because someone else that has no correlation with whatever's happened, they'll start moving mad and get annoyed and transfer their anger on this other person that has absolutely nothing to do with whatever has made them angry. And in that sense, you're destroying other people around you because you're unable to control the fact that this is how you're feeling. And it's not that it's invalid that you feel like that, but it's then knowing how I feel like this, what am I going to do about it so that everyone around me isn't now negatively impacted because of that. That requires like a lot of wisdom to then know how to interact. Okay, so in terms of self-regulation, and of course we've spoken about self-awareness, this is a time for you to think about some particular questions. How well do you understand your emotions or are able to pinpoint how you are feeling? And then, do you let those emotions affect other people around you? Does everyone around you know that you are angry when you are angry? And is it everyone that doesn't even necessarily need to know that you're angry? Know that you're angry? Are you huffing and puffing, about to blow everybody's heads off because something happened to you earlier on that day? Yeah, so those are some important questions to sort of think of to help you assess how aware you are and how well you regulate your emotions. So moving on swiftly to empathy. Panashe, give us a definition, please.
So empathy is your ability to understand emotions, needs, and concerns of other people, and also to pick up on emotional cues, feel comfortable socially, and recognize the power dynamics in a group or organization.
Lovely. Empathy. I just laugh because I think a lot of people think they're empathetic but are just not at all. When I think of empathy, I think of the ability to be like, you can walk in someone else's shoes and understand exactly like how they feel, because you're able to put yourself in their shoes and understand maybe how they perceive things, and then treat them in accordance to how you'd want to also be treated. Yeah, that's for me empathy. And I just feel like there are some people that just don't show empathy, and maybe as a result of how they also feel towards themselves. Maybe they don't necessarily empathize with the fact that they do feel a certain way or allow themselves to feel the emotions that they want to feel. So then when other people are expressing themselves, they don't want to necessarily understand where they're coming from. Do you get what I'm saying?
Yeah, I understand. I think that with empathy, as with like a lot of things that relate to emotional intelligence, there has to be a removal of self-centeredness. And a lot of us, just like with the demands of life and the stresses and the things and responsibilities we have on us, it takes a lot of mental energy to remove yourself from your problems or your situation and put yourself in perspective of somebody else. But yeah, I think it really requires an element of like not focusing on yourself, which is not common. Because even in the definition I read, like it sounds like it's a lot to do with your ability to kind of just be still and absorb what's going on around you. And like if we think about how we interact with people, like when we're having a conversation with somebody after a weekend, when we get back to like all my examples have been about work. That's my thing, unfortunately, at the moment. Not unfortunately.
It's a good thing, man.
Kind of. I think that like when you have a conversation with somebody after a long weekend and you're catching up and say, oh, how was your weekend? And they're like, oh, actually it was bad. That throws us off naturally, because that's not the normal social norm. Like the niceties are like, oh, it was fine. And then when somebody is truthful and they're open and they're honest and they say, oh, actually it was bad, it's like, oh, before you move on, actually I have to go do lots of things. I don't have time to have this explanation from you, and I don't know if I have the emotional reserve to support you right now. And we get really into our heads when people are trying to be open and vulnerable. And that's like a blockade to us being empathetic, because if you're not listening properly, then how are you able to recognize the emotions of somebody's needs or their concerns if you can't even really, if you're not really hearing them? So yeah, I think it really it's like a denial of self, like that biblical denial of self, and that true humility of seeing others as more important than yourself.
Yes.
So yeah, it's complex.
I think with that, and you just said spotted on the fact that it's a biblical ability in the Bible again. It's so cool because I think everything can literally stem from biblical concepts as well. In James 1 verse 19, it says, my dear brothers and sisters, take note of this. Everyone should be quick to listen, slow to speak, and slow to become angry. And as you were saying, having those interactions with people where you actually do want to listen, actively listen, not just listen in terms of, I'm listening to you now so I can just say whatever I want to say, because when we do that, we don't necessarily want to try and understand what the person is saying. And from having more understanding of how someone's week has been, you're going to be able to pick up on how they feel and be able to maybe then relate to them in an easier way and understand where they're coming from. And then naturally, it's going to be easier to actually want to empathize with them. But I think, as you said, like in our society, everyone's just quick to get on with whatever they're doing. And listening is never really a thing that you want to do and sit down and have someone else offload that sort of emotional baggage, should we say, quote unquote, on you. I think it's really important, as you said, in terms of emotional reserve, to know exactly where the person you're even talking to is coming from, where they're at in terms of their headspace, and know whether or not you can really just spill all that you're going through on them right now. Not that they don't want to listen to you, but like they obviously do care about you, but it's sort of knowing when and where to actually speak about those sort of things. I take that wisdom.
That's true. I think like me now giving people homework. The next time you're in a conversation with somebody, because we do it all the time, like you'll be talking to somebody and whilst they're speaking, you're thinking about your reply. Think about, really take a mental note of how often when you're speaking to people, you're just waiting to speak as opposed to actually hearing what they're saying. And try and bite your tongue more often than not, because I think a lot of us I do this all the time, particularly when I'm busy and rushed, like, and I thought it was endearing, it is not endearing, of like finishing people's sentences for them, like predicting their thoughts. Yeah, or like people, I honestly, I think I'm like, I don't know, I was gonna say a witch. I'm not a witch. No.
She's not a witch.
A witch. I don't know. It's kind of like when if somebody bleeps me and they're like, I have something I want you to do, and I'm like, oh yeah, I know what it is. Well, no, actually just let them finish what they're saying. Or when somebody's speaking to you at lunchtime, or your housemate speaking to your mum is speaking to you after she comes back from work, or your uni flatmates have come back home, like just practice being a little less chatty if you are chatty, or even if you're not chatty, and let them speak and really let them delve in, ask them for like leading questions and follow-up questions about the things that they're talking about, show some genuine interest. Because although it's not empathy in the sense that like, oh, I can see why you would be concerned, it's like the practice for when you're going to actually need to be empathetic. It gives you a good practice or test run of what the kind of behaviors you need to be performing are like.
Yeah. Thank you. That moves us on very nicely to the last component, which is social skills. Yeah, people skills. What was that? For social skills, this involves the ability to manage relationships, build networks, find common ground, and build rapport. Yeah.
So yeah, you just gave a good definition of social skills. And like everything else in emotional intelligence, like the self-awareness, self-regulation, and empathy are all like predecessors that cannot be separated from each other, because if you're engaging in those domains appropriately, you are more likely to have a good set of social skills. So social skills are, like you said, what helps you build your network of friends, what helps you do well or do better in romantic relationships, what helps you walk into a room full of strangers and kind of figure out what's going on. They're very important.
I feel like you always have that type of person that isn't too aware of the impact they have on others, and as a result they'll just carry on doing what they're doing, and in fact they have poor social skills. They can be very intelligent in other ways, but when it then comes to actually interacting with people don't actually want to be around them, just because the way they carry themselves is not really, it can be quite draining. And so as a result, you're just like, I don't want to be a part of this drama type of thing.
They're bulldozers, like they bulldoze their way through life. They come into a room and they assert themselves and they're like, I have arrived, like Navy leaks, like they are here, everybody needs to know. And they're often like very, like, they're not to say that they're not nice people, they're very outgoing, which is a great attribute to have. Like, it's an important thing to have, like particularly in leadership and stuff, but they don't have that quiet prowess, and they don't have that. All they have is like full volume. This is my new friend that I met 2 minutes ago. Let me introduce you to so and so. Meanwhile, you've been knowing them for 4 years. Like those kinds of people.
Okay, so we've come to the end of the 4 main components of emotional intelligence, which involved self-awareness, self-regulation, empathy, and social skills. Now, of course, we haven't spoken about everything to do with emotions or gone into any specific emotions in detail. So over the next few episodes, we will be discussing some specific emotions. For example, how we find dealing with conflict. Yeah, just talk about emotions a bit more and really try to be emotionally intelligent people, as that will affect our relationship with other people. And as we know, the 10 commandments can all be divided into our relationship with God and our relationship with other people. And so God cares about our relationship with others, because essentially the love we show towards others should be a reflection of the love that we receive from him. And so that's why we feel like this is a very important topic to talk about in terms of our emotions. So the undiluted word to take away from this episode, Panashe, what are your key points you want to tell everyone?
Reflect in some sort of a journal or on your phone, let's be honest, about your emotions. If you're the kind of person who hasn't, just spend a little bit of time this week, particularly on days that are difficult for you, thinking about how you're feeling, what the root of those feelings might be, and how that's changed your behavior.
Mm.
And then my second one would be talk less, listen more.
Lovely. Thank you very much. And I guess one more point I could say from sort of what the Bible is foolish people are the ones that can't control their emotions. And once again, I don't want to be a fool. So it would be good to learn to control your emotions and actually be in control of them. Don't let them control you. So I pray that Lord will help us in this journey in terms of becoming more aware of our emotions and how that might affect us personally and others around us. Thank you very much, Panashe, for joining us on this episode.
Thank you for having me.
It's been great hearing about your insight into emotional intelligence, and we look forward to hearing more from you. Make sure you check us on Instagram, which is _, and also check the website, theundilatedword.com. So we'll be back in 2 weeks to discuss how we deal with difficult people. So till you hear from us again, stay safe and stay blessed. Bye.